And welcome again
Blog
to the
Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome to the Michigan Voice with your host Wayne Bradley. And tonight I've got some great guests on the show tonight. I want to thank everybody that's listening in tonight. The call-in number, if you have any questions you want to talk to our guests, is 347-996-3175. Again, that call-in number is 347-996-3175. So again, thank everybody for listening in tonight. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about all my guests tonight. I've got Gary Glenn from the American Family Association of Michigan joining me tonight. I've got State Representative Tom McMillin. I also have activist and leader in Michigan, Stacy Swimp, and also from the president of Michigan Ford, Brandon Jessup. So I mean, we've got an amazing lineup of people tonight, and I'm really looking forward to this show. We've got a lot of work to do still here in Michigan. Our economy is still suffering. We've lost more jobs than over the last 10 years than any other state, and we've got a lot of work to do here. In the first couple months of the year, our new governor, Rick Snyder, has managed to get a budget in place and get some things accomplished that no really other governor's done in quite a long time. So we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to do. And my first guest, Gary Glenn, who is the president of American Family Association of Michigan, he's done some great work throughout the country, bringing the right-to-work initiatives there. And I'm looking forward to talking with Gary about some of these issues here in Michigan and what we face. And I'm going to bring Gary on the show. Gary, welcome to the Michigan Voice. How are you doing today?
Awesome, Wayne. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As we're talking here, we've got a new Republican governor. We've got Republican leadership in the House, and we still have a lot of work to do. What do you think about the idea that the fact that we have Republican leadership now and we're still not moving in the direction probably as fast as you would like with the rights work initiatives? And before we even get started, I would like everybody who's listening in tonight. This is Gary Glenn. He is the president of the American Family Association of Michigan. Gary, can you kind of give the listeners a little background history about yourself first?
You bet, Wayne. Since 1999, I've been president of the American Family Association of Michigan, as you mentioned, and our website is afamichigan.org. I'm one of the two people, along with Ave Maria Law School professor Pat Gillen, who authored the Marriage Protection Amendment that was on the ballot in 2004 that said marriage shall remain only between one man and one woman, overwhelmingly approved by Michigan voters. But AFA Michigan is a strong and passionate voice for traditional family values. So since 1999, I've addressed primarily religious free speech issues, the right of courthouses to display 10 Commandments, the right of school systems to recognize the Christmas holiday, also the damage done to children by pornography. Especially in public libraries that are financed by tax dollars, where some 45-year-old guy can go pull up pornographic sites next to a 10-year-old nearby in the library. We've taken a stand against that, and various things. But we are primarily known for being a voice for protecting one-man, one-woman marriage. That passed in the city of Detroit, passed in Flint, passed in Saginaw. In fact, the only places in the state that it did not pass were in the two counties that have Michigan State and the University of Michigan. Before doing that, I worked on the school choice issue. I was promoting the universal tuition tax credit, which was endorsed not only by 72% of all state and federal candidates running as Republicans in Michigan in 1998, but was also endorsed by the president of the Wolverine Missionary Baptist Convention, the largest African-American denomination in Michigan, and also the president of the National Baptist Convention, which is one of the largest African-American denominations in the country. And this proposal would have provided a tax credit not only to individuals, but to corporations who wrote scholarship checks to low-income parents to give them the same power that wealthier parents have to choose a better or safer school for their child. In fact, Dr. A.J. Pointer, who's now gone on to be with the Lord, was president of the Wolverine Missionary Baptist Convention. His church in Flint was located right across the street from the Ford plant, And literally under this proposal, which unfortunately is not yet in law in Michigan, the Ford plant could write $1 million check to Reverend Pointer's church for him to turn around and use for scholarships for low-income kids in Flint, and then Ford would get $1 million off of its state tax bill. But because the tax credit per student was capped at half what the state spends for every student in the public schools, it would mean that one half of whatever the state had budgeted for each of those students would be a savings to the state, meaning that there would be more money per pupil left in the public school system. So It was a win-win-win all the way around, which explains why you had major African-American denominations endorsing it. At the same time, 72% of all Republican candidates in Michigan were endorsing it. Before that, I lived in Idaho for 20 years, and the topic we're going to talk about today, in Idaho back in the 1980s, I ran the campaign that successfully passed a right-to-work law, passed it through the legislature with more than two-thirds in support because we had to override a Democratic gubernatorial veto, defended it on the ballot even though we got outspent $3 million to $1 million, and it simply said that every employee was free to join or pay dues to a union if he wants to, but he was equally free to decide not to join and pay dues and not fear the threat of being discriminated against and fired for making his choice either way.
Okay, and that's sometimes I think that's the confusion what people have with the idea of right to work. Can you kind of explain that more for some people that are listening in?
Well, it really is, Wayne, as simple as I just explained it. You know, it's been illegal in this country since the 30s to discriminate against and fire somebody because they choose to join or financially support a union. And all we propose is that it be equally illegal to discriminate against and fire someone who chooses not to join and pay dues. So in all 50 states, federal law guarantees every employee's right to engage in collective bargaining, to vote to affiliate with a union, to certify a union, to join the union, to financially support the union. That's guaranteed by federal law in all 50 states. No state law can change that. But in 22 states, and we hope someday soon Michigan, they have laws, civil rights laws, that prohibit discrimination against individuals who choose not to join or financially associate themselves with a union, so that people are free to choose either way and be protected either way in making that choice. Can't be fired, can't be discriminated against, whichever way they choose.
Okay. All right. Now, we spoke on a panel together once, and I think this is something that a lot of probably even union members aren't familiar with. You said something that was interesting to me. You said that sometimes union dues go to causes that these members aren't aware of. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit more?
Well, I'll give you a real good example that I think displays that kind of thing in the best way. I just mentioned a few minutes ago that I was one of two co-authors of the Marriage Protection Amendment that was on the ballot here in Michigan in 2004. And as with any election, there were polls done throughout the fall season. There were polls done on Election Day, exit polls, people coming out of the voting places. Both the pre-election polls and the exit polls said that two-thirds of union households in Michigan voted in favor of the Marriage Protection Amendment, reaffirming the constitutional definition of marriage in our state as only between one man and one woman. So two-thirds of union households agreed with you and me, Wayne, that marriage should remain between a man and a woman. And yet those two-thirds of union households were forced, under threat of being fired, to give money to organizations such as the Michigan Education Association and the AFL-CIO, which actively campaigned, including using their members' money, actively campaigned against the Marriage Protection Amendment. So here you had two-thirds of union households, Christian and otherwise, whatever their motivation was for supporting the Marriage Protection Amendment, whether it was a religious conviction or a moral conviction or just common sense, what they thought was in the best interests of children, whatever their motivation was, they voted for the marriage amendment and were forced under threat of being discriminated against and fired to give money to organizations that campaigned against that amendment. We think that's wrong. We think it ought to be illegal. And it went even beyond just Election Day. After it was approved by about 60% of the voters, including two-thirds of union households, the ACLU in Michigan filed a lawsuit to limit the enforcement of the Marriage Protection Amendment, and their plaintiff was a group called Pride at Work, AFL-CIO. So that's the AFL-CIO's own in-house homosexual activist group.
Wow.
And their slogan, literally, Wayne, I'm not making this up, their slogan is a clenched fist under which the words appear, Proud Union Queer. Christian union members in Michigan are forced to give money to organizations that support that kind of agenda. The AFL-CIO Executive Council in 2005 unanimously passed a resolution endorsing so-called homosexual marriage, opposing both the federal and state marriage protection amendments, and even taking it one step further and endorsing cross-dressing rights on the job, which is a guy who claims to believe he's a woman, wants to wear women's clothing to work, wants to use the women's restroom, the women's shower, the women's locker room, that kind of thing.
Wow.
The AFL-CIO endorsed all that stuff. Most union members don't support that kind of agenda, and yet they're forced under threat of being fired to give money to organizations that promote it. A state right-to-work law would make people free to choose whether or not their money is going to go to organizations that support that kind of thing. And we think every employee in the state should be free to do so.
Okay. Now, to someone that's a member of a union or something like that, they might look at that as strictly as, from a political ploy or something as maybe union busting. What do you tell that person, that individual, to look at that? I mean, because I guess that's the best way to look. What do you explain to that individual, the loyal union?
Not the first time I've heard that, Wayne.
I'm sure.
So I would respond two ways. One is to simply note that, as I said earlier, federal law guarantees the right to join and financially support a union in all 50 United States of America. So even in right-to-work states, the 22 states that already have it, you are equally free to join and financially support a union there just as you are in all the other states under federal law, and no state law can change that. And one great example is the state of Nevada, which is a right-to-work state, which has the same percentage of its workforce unionized on a strictly voluntary basis, because it cannot be compulsory in a right-to-work state. The same percentage of its workforce unionized as we have here in Michigan, where union membership, if you work at a unionized plant or a place of employment, is compulsory. You either join and pay dues, financially support the union, or you're fired. But my best response to that is this, because I simply think it is a ridiculous assertion. The First Amendment guarantees our freedom to choose the church of our choice or no church at all. Who would dare suggest that the First Amendment, by protecting our freedom to choose, is church busting? I think it's just a ridiculous characterization, because every employee in the state of Michigan under a right-to-work law would be just as free to join and pay dues to a union, to affiliate with a union under federal law as they are today.
What do you think that would do for the business climate here in Michigan if we ever got to that stage?
Well, let me tell you a little bit of history, and then I think some things that are easily findable by anybody who knows how to use the internet and can use Google. Just look it up. But I can tell you about the history in the state of Idaho. Idaho had lost 8% of its manufacturing jobs in the 5 years prior to passage of right to work. 30,000 people a year were leaving the state of Idaho. Does this sound familiar to you, Wayne?
Yes, very familiar.
So the voters upheld the right-to-work law in November of 1986. Within 18 months, Idaho was number one in the nation in new growth, in new job creation, and in income growth. So not just new job creation, but the fastest-growing income in the nation, coming from a position like Michigan where they were losing jobs, losing people. 18 months later, overnight, dramatic. And USA Today did a story in 2007, which was right before the recession hit, the bailouts and all of that has afflicted all 50 states and, in fact, the world. And this 2007 article by USA Today said that Idaho had a run of economic growth unmatched by any other state that had lasted until that day. They said until today. From 1987, they said throughout the article, several places, it started in 1987. Well, they never said in the article why it started in 1987.
Right.
Those of us who were there knew it's because right at the end of 1986, Idaho voters had supported a right-to-work law. Similarly, here in Michigan, all you have to do is go and Google it. Right-to-work is an extremely important factor in where plants are located, where corporate owners decide to put their plants, and not just American manufacturers, but manufacturers in Germany and Japan who have located their automobile plants in the right-to-work states of Tennessee and South Carolina and Alabama, no longer in Michigan. With our manufacturing base, with our infrastructure, with our skilled workers, with the resources of the Great Lakes, if we were the first Great Lakes right-to-work state, we would experience an economic boom unlike anything that's been seen by any state, simply because, we're a much bigger state than Idaho. Oklahoma passed right-to-work in 2001 by a vote of the people, and within a year they went to number one in both job creation and income growth. So those are both smaller states than Michigan with less infrastructure, less skilled workers. If we had that same law on the books here in Michigan, we would become an economic juggernaut overnight, and that's the kind of future that our children deserve once again here in Michigan.
Okay. Now, the question is, Gary, what do we need to do in Michigan to get it to a right-to-work state? Would that require votes by the people, or would that be something in the legislative body?
Well, I think that it's going to actually see both. There's a new organization called Michigan Freedom to Work, the public spokesman of which are UAW members, current and former UAW members, that was announced just a couple of weeks ago. If your listeners want to look it up, it's myfreedom2work.com, MI for Michigan, myfreedom2work.com. The legislature is not in session in July and August, but when the legislature returns around Labor Day, as it happens to be, we expect to see a right-to-work bill, freedom-to-work bill, introduced in the state Senate, the state House. And so I think the legislature is going to address it first. I think there's a fairly good shot that it'll actually pass the legislature. Okay. You know what you call, Wayne, the only people in Lansing who have enough votes to keep Michigan from being a right-to-work state? You know what those folks are called?
What's that?
Republicans.
Uh-oh.
Now the only people in Lansing who can stop Michigan from being a right-to-work state are Republicans, because the Republicans have over two-thirds control of the Senate. They have a 20-vote margin in the House. They have the governor's chair. So if Michigan's not a right-to-work state in the next 18 months, it's because Republicans prevented it from happening. But we're fairly optimistic as to its chances. And Governor Snyder said when he was running that if it reaches his desk, he will sign it. Okay. Now, if it goes through both houses and he signs it, then the union officials who want to keep their power to force people to give them money under threat of being fired, they have the option of gathering enough signatures to force it onto the ballot, which I'm sure they'll do. Okay. They'll spend tens of millions of dollars trying to convince people that they ought to continue to be allowed to force people to give them money as a condition of employment. And then the voters of Michigan eventually will get to decide. But I think it's going to go through the legislature first.
What do you, just out of curiosity, like you said, we have a Republican-led House governor. What do you think has been the holdup to this point of even introducing or talking about some of this kind of legislation?
Well, they've been very busy on the budget, and nobody was pushing them. This is the first legislature, I think in 10 years, that got a budget done as quickly as they got it done. And so, hats off to them. And we, commend the governor for getting something done that had not been done in a long time. But the budget's now been done. They had other legislation to address, and the group that has been publicly calling for a right-to-work law wasn't even formed and announced, publicly at least, until the last couple of weeks. Right. So I know a lot of effort on the ground is going to go into July and August to develop grassroots support. For example, the Grand Traverse County Commission last week passed a resolution calling on the legislature and governor to pass a right-to-work law to help bring jobs to the Traverse City area. The Washtenaw County Republican Central Committee, which is the home county of Governor Rick Snyder, passed a resolution calling on the Republican legislature and the governor and the state Republican Party to support passage of right to work, and that just happened about a month ago. So I think the groundswell is slowly building. So I don't feel like they're late. They had a lot of stuff to do, the first 5 or 6 months they were in session. But when they get back, I think because of the dramatic impact that it would have on Michigan's economy, and because, freedom of conscience is an important issue regardless of the economic impact, we would hope that it would be near the top of their list of things on their to-do list when they get back from the summer recess come Labor Day.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that you will not let that get too far from the minds. I appreciate what you're trying to do here in Michigan. If people are listening in and they want to support your organization, what's the website information that you can give them?
Our website, American Family Association of Michigan, is AFA Michigan. Spell it out. So AFAMICHIGAN.org, AFAMichigan.org. And the Michigan Freedom to Work website is MIFreedom2Work.com. So AFAMichigan.org, MIFreedom2Work.com to support both our organization and to support the new organization that's specifically and exclusively pushing the right to work law in particular. Okay.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Gary, for coming on this evening, kind of explaining to people, because I'm sure there's people out there that listen that are confused about what could be, the benefits of having the right to work state, and it sounds like we're moving in the right direction here in Michigan.
Well, when you take into account that 2/3 of all the right to work states in the country right now have higher per capita income than Michigan does, they're leading the nation in the creation of jobs. The top 5 states in America for creating new jobs are right to work states. The bottom 5 for losing jobs are all compulsory union states, and the worst in the country is Michigan. And one study was just done that came out last month in Biz Journals that was a 50-year study. You don't see those very often.
Right.
Since 1960, I think it was 8 of the top 10 states over 50 years with the fastest growing income were right-to-work states. 50th over the last 50 years. Number 50, guess which state was 50th in income growth? Michigan.
Wow.
So employees in these states not only have the freedom to work without being forced to join or pay dues to a union, they have an opportunity to work because those states are leading the nation in the creation of new jobs and with the fastest growing income in the nation as well. So Michigan employees deserve that same type of prosperity in our future once again. And we hope your listeners will call their legislators, call their senators, urge them to vote in favor of the Freedom to Work legislation.
Excellent.
And Wayne, thank you for getting the word out, giving me the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I said, after I spoke with you when we were on that conference together, I thought that the information that you have can really make people look at it from a different perspective. So thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
You bet, man. God bless you.
God bless you, too. Have a good evening, Gary.
You too.
Bye-bye. So that was Gary Glenn from the American Family Association of Michigan. Like I said, he's working hard here to get Michigan on the right path as far as our economic situation. And you can't help but wonder, like you said, being 50th, all options should be on the table. So I think as we move forward, the state of Michigan and the people will figure out ways to bring business back to Michigan. So, again, thank you for Gary for coming on the show. My next guest I'm about to give him a call is Tom McMillin. He's a state rep out of Michigan. He's truly a champion for states' rights, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, so I'm going to get him on the air here. Hold on real quick, folks. Eight.
Hello.
Representative McMillin?
Yes.
Hi, this is Wayne. How you doing, sir?
Good, Wayne.
Thank you for
How are you
coming
doing?
on the... All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight.
Sure.
You're on live.
Very good. I was listening to Gary just before I just was.
Yep, I appreciate you coming on tonight. More I was doing some research about you. You're really what I would call a champion here in Michigan for states' rights. Can you give the people listening in tonight a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, about myself, I've been I ran the Christian Coalition back in the 90s. I got involved in politics because of really fighting for the unborn, and that got me involved in the early 90s. But ran the Christian Coalition here in Michigan in the mid-90s, and was on city council in Auburn Hills and mayor of Auburn Hills for a while, was a county commissioner here in Oakland County, and ran for Congress in 98 against Dale Kildee and lost, but not by much. And now I'm a state rep. I got elected. I'm a CPA as well, but I got elected in 2008 and in my second term.
Well, while you were listening to me and Gary, what did you think about, obviously you're a state representative. What do you think about the idea of bringing right to work here to Michigan?
Yeah, I think that giving people the opportunity, like it's called freedom to work, giving people the ability to decide whether they want to join a union, and if that decision, based on their decision, they can't be denied working at a place. I think that's very legitimate, and I would support that. And I think that that most people would, if it's really made clear that it truly is a freedom issue, which it is. But I know that others that oppose that and want to keep the status quo will create all kinds of strange views about what's going to happen and the consequences. But I got to tell you, I'm really tired of losing businesses to these states that support freedom to work, and like Tennessee and others. So I think it would be a boon for Michigan, that's for sure, and Michigan workers.
Yeah, I think the misconception, because a lot of people say, oh, they're not opening plants anymore. No, they're just not opening them in Michigan.
Right, exactly. No, and Governor Granholm in the last when I was in last session for the last 2 years with Granholm in office, she would do a lot of these handouts, corporate welfare, and claim that we've attracted a business to Michigan that was going to go to Tennessee. Well, we had to pay them like $200,000 or $300,000 a job, and the main reason we were competing and we'd lose a lot of those as well is because they were going to a right to work or a freedom to work state. So it's cost us dearly, one way or the other, and I think it's something that would, like I said, it would really make it so that we'd have a lot less unemployment, and we'd be a lot better off as a state.
Okay. Now we're actually getting Michigan moving in the right direction now. What are some of the things that have happened in the last 6 months with the new leadership that is different from the way things were being done before?
Well, like you heard Gary say, we were focused a lot on the budget, and that is something that we didn't get it done just to say we got it done. The school districts in our state have a June 30th year end, so they start July 1st, and they told us, look, it would make a huge impact on us if we can actually know what we're going to have to spend when we're approving our budgets. So that was one of the main pushes for us to get the budget done. And so, getting the budget done early was certainly an achievement. The emergency manager law, I think, I was the only co-sponsor of that law. The sponsor was Representative Pasholka from the west side of the state. But when he told our caucus that he was doing this, I ran up to the front and said, look, I want to get on this bill. And I was the only one. But I saw too often that we just, municipalities and school districts would just refuse to make a couple tough decisions and rein spending in. And if they would just make those, and what ends up happening in a lot of these cities, the councils will take them to court because the unions are back in the councils. We'll take these emergency financial managers to court. They'll spend more time in court trying to be able to
Fight.
just do a few things. So, it just was a lot of gray areas. The courts were making a lot of the decisions, a lot of just unproductive time. We just needed to get in there and get out, and this new emergency manager law, I think it's great. I mean, when's the last time you've ever seen a Detroit City Council falling over themselves to cut
get a budget
more than the mayor is cutting? And both of them are saying, we're going to keep the emergency manager out. No, we are. What they're saying is we're going to be responsible. No, we're going to be more responsible. I mean,
exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's right there. I remember telling my wife, I said, now, see, that law works. I lived in Detroit all my life, and I had never seen a battle for budget cuts ever in Detroit. So, I mean, I think that part in itself has definitely been effective. What in particular, what were the things that you guys made sure that strengthened up this position? What were the things that it accomplished?
Well, I mean, earlier, they can get involved earlier. So the state can go in and there's certain triggers, whether it's they can't pay their vendors on time, or they can't make payroll, or their bond rating falls to a certain level. The treasurer's office can go in and kind of, before they have to get to an emergency manager, they can go in and with a team and help them and say, look, if you do this, I think things are going to be good. And really, that was not part of the emergency financial manager law under Granholm, and actually Blanchard is the one who signed it into law. And so there's a lot of triggers to get the state involved earlier. And then, there are situations where, and the more controversial, and I'll say that it is controversial, is that it sets aside the authority. It doesn't fire the council, but it says, look, you guys have run this city into the ground for too long. You haven't made a few tough choices. So instead of you being involved and meddling with the emergency manager and taking them to court and doing all that, we're going to put some of your powers on hold. This emergency manager is going to step in and make a few decisions and then get out. And now they can do that, and they can also change contracts. We see that in Benton Harbor, where they've been fighting over emergency manager for years and years. Well, now the emergency manager went in there, made a few tough choices. They're going to be in the black next year. They're turning around.
Now, that's where Jesse Jackson and all those guys were making all that noise up there in Benton Harbor, right?
There, and I think he came to Pontiac as well. And so, it just was something that made it, really took a lot of the gray areas out and said, so that a lot of the issues that were taken to court, and I think that was strong and needed, but it did give the emergency manager more authority to go in, make some changes, and leave. And it also gave the legislature the ability to remove emergency manager. That was something that was kind of a compromise, so that if we've got I'm not Governor Snyder, but some other governor is sending emergency managers in all over the place unwarranted, the legislature can step in and remove emergency managers. But this doomsday stuff about what's going to happen, we don't want anybody in emergency manager, and no city has to fall into emergency manager.
Right.
If they just make a few tough decisions, nobody does. So.
Exactly. Now, what would you say to the detractors of that say that you're taking away the rights of the people who voted these people in the first place? What would you say to those detractors of that, of the strengthening of the law?
What we're talking about here is, cities that are being irresponsible are racking up debt that ultimately will fall upon all citizens of the state of Michigan if they don't turn things around. So ultimately, those municipal bonds and others are going to be paid for by us, by you and me. So we have a vested interest to say, look, you guys are not making the tough decisions. Voters are not putting in people that will make the tough decisions. And I'm sorry. So this would be a reason why voters would say, look, we don't want an emergency manager in here. Let's make sure we put in people that are going to stand up to, some of the special interests and make some changes. Look, the average household lost 21.3% of their income in the last decade, according to the Census Bureau. Right. And that is not what's been happening at the cities and the municipalities. They have not been tightening their belt like that in many instances. And so, we just need to kind of do some belt tightening and make a few tough decisions. And if they're not willing to, and the voters aren't willing to elect people to do that, well, we've got to take care of the risks for all the rest of us taxpayers in the state.
Exactly. Now, I was like I said, I've told people about you, and we were talking about state right issues. You're very strong on state right issues. Let's talk about a few of them. You recently wrote up a TSA bill, and can we talk a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think that people really understand. I mean, it's important, the TSA, to, I guess there's a role certainly of government to keep us safe. I mean, that's one of the few functions of government, and I guess, but it certainly does not have to come at the cost of our rights and our privacy rights. And I think just about everybody knows that in many areas the TSA is going over the line, and I just can't sit by here as a Michigan legislator and say, come on, feds, do whatever you want. Come on in, accost our citizens, just do whatever you want with them. Have at it. I mean, I really felt that, and I will admit that Texas was the first one to at least look at doing this. They didn't actually follow through this year. But, it just says that it's a misdemeanor if you don't have reasonable cause, to be touching certain areas of our citizens. And I think we need to stand up for our citizens.
Now, how do you feel about the way the Obama administration threatened Texas, essentially saying if you tried to pass something like that, then they wouldn't fly planes into Texas?
I think that that all we're looking for is other ways. I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't make sure that there's safety in getting on the airplanes, but other countries have other ways of doing it without completely insulting and accosting citizens. And I got to tell you, my wife is from Brazil, and she took our two daughters to Brazil to see her family every year, and she went a couple of months ago, and we had to have this conversation. I had to say, Dalila, what happens if our 4-year-old gets pulled aside? I mean, that's a terrible thing to even have to talk to your wife about.
Right.
What about if they start touching Nana, and what do we tell her? And you were told, it's really a strange situation. So I just think that the feds, I think that they'd back down, especially if 10 or 12 states were doing this. I mean, if they want to, I have a feeling that if they said that to Michigan, you'd see a lot of other states standing up. There's a real fresh breeze of people standing up and saying, enough's enough. We're taking our country back, and we're going to start drawing the line about what you can do from Washington. Yeah,
I recently saw a clip of a little girl. She's kicking and screaming, trying to get away from the man, and he still went ahead and tried to basically pat her down, a 4-year-old. I think if maybe we did better police work, looking for the bad guys instead of harassing. I mean, Donald Rumsfeld today got patted down. I don't know if you saw that on TV or not, but he was going through an airport in Chicago, and they pulled him aside, and they had it all on videotape. And I'm wondering, what are we doing, and and the bad guys are slipping right through the door while you're searching Donald Rumsfeld. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
I'm not a security expert, Wayne. I can't tell you what it is. I just know that they can do something else. And I know they do other things in other countries to ensure their safety, whether it's Israel or others with, I don't know, bomb-sniffing dogs, or with techniques of asking some questions and really being trained to know what to look for. I don't know, but all I know is that I can't just sit by and watch them, accost our citizens. Not that it happens all the time, but I think one time is too much, and I think that a lot of people are concerned with this. I'm just raising the issue and saying, look, when you violate our citizens, we're going to call it a misdemeanor, whether you're somebody out on the streets, or you got a badge on. If you don't have reasonable cause, you just can't do it.
Exactly. What about the healthcare freedom bill? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, that's strictly just saying that, and we did a petition drive a couple years back with Wendy Day. Actually, it was a little over a year ago. And got a lot of signatures. Didn't get on the ballot, but the statute that I proposed would basically say that citizens in Michigan have the right to opt out. Not that the whole state would opt out of Obamacare. If you want to stay with that, whatever system comes about, you can. But if you want to not let the feds get in between you and your doctor, or if you're a business owner and you don't want the feds telling you what you can and cannot offer to your workers, then you can opt out. And other states are doing it. And, it'll be challenged, but there is reason to believe that, the U.S. Supreme Court has been making some decisions that are leaning towards states' rights. And, I just think that we got to fight. Hopefully it'll be repealed, but if it doesn't get repealed, I'm going to try to make it so that at least our citizens can opt out.
Exactly. Again, you're fighting for states' rights here. Now, this recent bill, I think is very interesting because a lot of people have made a lot of noise about on a national level, is the light bulb bill.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much you're exempting Michigan from the light bulb independence, from the energy independence act 2007?
Well, Wayne, what that would do is say, the feds, their only claim to being able to regulate what we make and sell in Michigan is the Interstate Commerce Clause. So as long as they make the light bulbs in Michigan and sell them in Michigan and the light bulbs don't cross the state line, the feds have nothing to say about it. And so, that's, again, what Texas and other states are looking at, and I decided to also push for the rights of our citizens here in Michigan to to be able to decide what light bulb they're going to use, if you believe that or not. But it's
gotten to that point
it.
now, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard to believe Washington is. And it comes from the same people who not long ago were complaining to me that, hey, you stay out of our bedroom, with your social issues, and they not only want to be in my bedroom, they want to be in my bathroom and every room in my house, just telling me what to do with the light bulbs. So
and these are some expensive light bulbs.
Huh?
And these are some expensive light bulbs they want us to buy too, aren't they?
Well, exactly, and they're dangerous. And the mercury. There's 20 steps to go through if one breaks. And I've been in Lansing where these folks on the left get silly with some of this stuff about mercury, but I guess there is some issues with mercury. They seem to not care at all that these light bulbs have mercury in them, and so it just is. They don't work. Some people say they don't work that well. The thing is, that's fine if people want to use them, but we ought to have the freedom, for goodness sake. So that's all I'm looking for.
Sounds like you need a hazmat team to clean that up.
Exactly. No, you're not joking either. And so it's just it's a strange thing. And I really believe that we need to start standing up to the federal government and saying, they'll just keep going until we stand up. So I think your listeners just need to encourage their legislators to just start standing up for us. People in Washington probably aren't going to stand up for us. We probably need our state legislators and governors to start standing up for us.
I can agree on that. Now, there's another issue that the state has already voted on as far as medical marijuana. Now, we've had a lot of different topics, a lot of different people. Bill Schuette, he wants to tighten up the rules. What do you think we need to do to either tighten up those rules or make it so there's not so many gray areas involved in this bill or in these rights for people that voted on it?
Yeah, it is the more gray. You got some areas of the state that are allowing them. There's other states that are being shut down by the police. The feds are saying they're going to come in and that marijuana anywhere for any use is illegal. I think that it needs to be clarified. You can't. The voters did speak. I didn't like what they decided, but they did speak, and I think that they would not want it if there was some ambiguity that we can clean up without having to go back to the voters on an amendment to their Constitution. I think we should do it to clarify it.
Okay. Now, looks like I have a call here, Tom. Do you mind taking a call from a call in over here?
That's fine.
All right, let me go ahead and bring this caller on there. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, how you guys doing?
All right, how you doing?
Well, I think I might have just come across a breath of fresh air.
I feel the same way about Tom.
Now, Tom, what is it you do, Tom? You're in the government?
Yeah, I'm a state representative here in Michigan.
Well, good for you. This is amazing. Actually, I'm calling from a lot of your Michigan folk come up to my town to for their cottages every year. I'm up Lake Huron, Kincardine, and we are being legislated with these light bulbs. And what you're saying is that if Michigan produces light bulbs themselves, that the feds can't interfere?
Exactly, and I'd
like to sign a contract with you, sir, as the sole distributor of Michigan light bulbs into Ontario, if you don't mind.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, I don't know that we have any people that make light bulbs in Michigan, but I guarantee if this bill goes through and it stands up to court scrutiny, that we will have people wanting to make light bulbs in Michigan because there'll be a lot of demand. There's no doubt about it. Well,
yeah, because I've been up here fighting windmills and wind farms and that for years, and it's ludicrous what's going on here. I agree. Just to stick to light bulbs for a minute, if you got listeners from Michigan, and if somebody's looking for a business opportunity, think light bulbs. I had a gentleman that moved out of his home. They're an elderly couple, and they could no longer live in their homes beside this wind turbine, and so he moved to another town, and I ran into him at a meeting, and I asked him how he was doing. And he held out his hand, and it was still shaking. And he was a top shooter. They used to go down to Michigan a lot to compete. And anyways, I asked him when he moved into his new house. I said, "Have you put those CFL light bulbs in there?" And he went, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, why don't you pull the bulbs and put the old incandescents back in and see how you do?" And I saw him a few months later at a meeting, and I said, how are you doing now? And he stuck his hand out, and it was solid as a rock. Right. And so, there's no need for these stupid light bulbs other than control. Now, while I'm talking to you, Tom, now, what's the deal in Michigan on smart meters? Are they trying to jam those things in on you guys as well?
Yes, they are. I can already tell you that. I got them.
Wayne, have you heard much about that? I haven't. I've gotten it on my radar. I haven't seen utilities pushing it yet, but I can't speak for the whole rest of the state. People in my district have not been calling me about it.
Yeah, I can say for a fact that I got a letter from DTE that told me that in the next month or so that they will be installing those meters out here. So
really.
And I know people in Southfield that have already had the meters installed, and they actually gave you instructions if you weren't available, or if you had older people in the home that were on ventilators, to let them know so they wouldn't come and cut your electricity off in the middle of the day without when people were relying on it. So it's definitely coming.
Yeah, wow. And that goes with the light bulbs, and this is their smart grid system, right? Which is going to go North American wide.
Yeah.
And the smart meters, I mean, this has gone beyond ridiculous. I mean, now they're going to be able to tell me when I can heat my house, how much heat I can use, when I can air condition, how much air condition, when I'm going to do my laundry. This has gone beyond ridiculous. I actually, when they came to put my smart meter on, I asked them not to put it on because I knew they're not going to turn ours on until probably after the next provincial election, which is in November. and so the guys went away, and then a couple months later, another couple of guys from the utility came in. They were older guys, and they came in to put the meter on. And I said, having a good talk with these people, and you say, well, you know what this is all about, and I know exactly what the smart meter is, and I would just as soon you don't put it on until, a couple of weeks before you're going to turn them on, right? So they went away. Right. They came back next. They came back.
It sounds like Tom has another something to check out here then.
Yeah, so they
Definitely.
came back.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
They came back the next day with they came back in the yard, and I said, weren't you here yesterday? And they went, yeah. And then 2 cops followed them in. And I go, what are you guys doing here? Right? I said, what are you doing? Running shotgun for these guys now or what? Then they go, well, actually, we are. And I said, well, wait a minute here. Wait a minute here. You're publicly paid people, and you're riding shotgun for the utility to put these smart meters on. So now my tax dollars are paying for you to ride shotgun for a private utility, which is public utility.
I appreciate you bringing that up because I had citizens talk about that, a couple at one of my district hours, but I haven't heard about it lately. But I'm glad I need to put that back on my radar.
Yeah, and what I try to do with the police, like the one cop, I talked to the one cop before, and the one guy was looking a little uppity, and I talked to the other policeman. I says, well, like I'm not, there's no threatening, nobody's being threatened or anything, right? I just, so, and so the one cop told the other cop to go away. He said, no, Ron's cool, man, don't worry about it, right? And so I had a really good chat with the utility guys and the policemen, because I try all the time to explain to any of these people that they have a duty to speak up, because we're all in this mess together. And yes, you're just doing your job, but your job that you're doing at this point in time is cutting your own throat. And worse than that is cutting your grandchildren's throats. Right. Right? And we have to think about them. Too often people think about their own immediate timeline. Right. And what this is being set up for is that the folks who, like, I'm mid-50s now, when we're going out the door, okay, this is going to take a little while yet, but I don't know how, I'll just get off here real quick, but I don't know how this is all being promoted as sustainability. And what I ask people is, do you know what is not sustainable? Right. Okay. And they go, well, plastic bags, and I go, no. But that's what they're told, right? Right. Yeah. But I said, everybody seems to know what the word sustainability is because they hear it all the time. But I said, do you know what is not sustainable from the sustainability people? And they go, what? I said, private property. Wow, okay. Is not sustainable. So, and because all of our rights are based on the right to property, whether you own property or not is not important, but the fact you have the right to property. And if you go through Agenda 21 and that, the game is on to remove our right of property, right? And high density housing and all the rest is nonsense. But who is that going to affect? It's going to affect the children being born today. And that's why we have to continue to fight on now to get these things correct. Yeah, so our kids can actually grow up and have a better situation. So. Because I think a lot, we have a duty to them more than ourselves. I really do believe that. So, Tom, good job. windfarms.wordpress.com. You can Skype me at ron.stevens7. I'd like to see that contract on my desk for the light bulb ASAP.
Thanks a lot, Ron. You have a good evening.
Have a good night, huh?
Thanks, Ron. Yeah. Well, sounds like you have a new cause here, Tom. Cause like I said, literally, I definitely got that letter within the last couple of weeks from DTE, and I'm on the border of Southfield Farmington. I know people in Southfield have already had them installed, so that is something that's definitely coming down the pike right now.
I agree, and I used to work at Michigan before I was with the Christian Coalition here in Michigan, so I am familiar with how utilities work, and the monopoly they have, but it certainly doesn't mean that they can put some device in our homes that can really do a lot of monitoring. And I think I do need to do some more research on this, but there is some concerns. I think there's legitimate concerns out there over these things.
Right. Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I want to give you a special thanks again for helping out my friend when they were reaching out to you, and you took care of it immediately. I said you're a stand-up guy, and I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Hey, it was an honor, Wayne. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks a lot. God bless you, and good night.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Tom McMillin, our state rep here in Michigan. My next guest, I'm about to reach out to him. He's from the District 45 in Rochester Hills, Tom McMillin. So if you're interested in finding out more about him, go to the Michigan House Republican, GOPhouse.com, and support Tom because like I said, he's fighting here for state rights for everybody here in Michigan. My next guest, who I'm about to have come on the show, Stacy Swimp, who is not only the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation here in Michigan, he is also leading a group to bring the right to work here. He's a spokesperson for the Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition, initiative that Gary had talked about earlier to make Michigan a right to work state. So my next guest is going to be Stacy Swimp, and I'm going to be bringing him on the show here. Please hold on. Caller, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Caller, you're on the air. Caller, you're on with Wayne Bradley. How you doing this evening? All right, we lost that call. Let me get Stacy on the phone here. Stacy is active doing a lot of things in the state of Michigan lately, and like I said, he's all over the place. Last weekend, he was at a Planned Parenthood rally in Saginaw, and he let the guy have it. I wish I could play the audio on the show because I was really proud of this guy. I consider him a good friend, and like I said, he's doing a lot of good things for the people here in Michigan, and also on the national level. Up there he is. Stacy.
Hi, this is Stacy.
All right, well, I'm going to be waiting for Stacy to give me a call back in here. You know, he's a busy man. So as we're moving forward, there's a lot going on here in Michigan. Stacy's been trying to bring the right to work state up, and there he goes right there. Stacy.
Hey, for some reason we got disconnected.
Yeah, I don't know if that was me or you. I apologize. Thank you for coming back on the show tonight.
Hey, man, it's my privilege. Thank you for having me.
Now, I was just telling people that you're involved in so many different causes, and you're doing so much great work around here. But the thing we've been talking about a lot lately, and the thing you told me you wanted to talk about, was prevailing wages and minimum wages here in the state of Michigan, and how that's affecting the, it's being a job killer. Can we talk a little? You want to elaborate more on that?
Well, yes. It's interesting that the unemployment rate for Black Americans is almost 17% under President Obama. For Black teenagers, it's 44%, which approaches the levels that we saw in the Great Depression. Now, ironically, Wayne, in the 1920s, Black unemployment rates were pretty much on par with those of white Americans. Guess what changed that? Union laws.
What's that? Uh-oh.
Union laws. President Roosevelt's New Deal actually did what I call seal the deal, ensuring that Black Americans did not sustain equal access to employment. Now, here we are, decades later, with blind allegiance to the Democratic Party, Black people, Black voters being taken for granted and essentially sabotaged by failed public policies such as prevailing wages, minimum wages, and you can throw in there tenured teachers and the Great Society Welfare Plan and so on. And I think it's time for black voters to cut the cord from the Dems. So that does not necessarily mean join the Republican Party, but it means at least start voting issues in our own best interest. One thing for sure is that we still have a Jim Crow law in effect, and it's called prevailing wages. And prevailing wages was created in 1931 under what was called the Davis-Bacon Act. And the intention of the Davis-Bacon Act was to favor white unionized workers over non-unionized workers. And today we still see in the urban cities non-unionized black employees and small black business owners who are non-unionized, who can't afford those kinds of wages, which are union wages, are locked out of the job market. So we're being hit upside the head and being cut off at the knees on both, and it's just something that we have to address. Okay.
Now, how will we go about getting that act repealed? Who could we rely on? Who could we call to get that act repealed?
Good question. Now, the Davis-Bacon Act is something that can be repealed locally. Your local municipalities can do it. Cities have done it across the country, and I think we have so far 10 states that have done it on a statewide level. So the first thing you can do is go to your local county commissioners, your local city council, and put pressure on your local representatives and tell them that you want them to support business-friendly public policies. You want to take away these regulations that prevent businesses from being able to create jobs for people in the urban centers. So that's one thing that you can do locally. Then, of course, you can put pressure on your state representatives to do the same thing. We need to do away with anti-business, anti-free enterprise regulations that prevent businesses from hiring people or prevent people who are entrepreneurial from creating businesses for themselves, particularly in the urban centers. I mean, when you look at the black unemployment rate, it's staggering, and it's something that we need to wake up. We need to wake up and realize that people who we think are defending our best interests are not defending our best interests, and that would be progressives who continue to support special interests, even at a cost of American families.
Exactly. Now, I'm sure a lot of workers aren't even familiar with some of that. Can you explain? Now, we also talked about minimum wages. Now, if someone heard you say, let's get rid of the minimum wage, they might think that you're trying to make sure they can't get paid, or you might want to say, oh, you're going to bring me down to $2 or $3 an hour. What do you tell that person that fears the idea of getting rid of minimum wages?
Well, the first thing is I would tell them you're not an illegal immigrant, so you don't have to worry about working for $3 an hour in America. That's not going to happen. You have market value that will drive those wages, and you have to do the research. Minimum wage essentially has reduced employment, particularly amongst teenagers. It made teenagers way more kind of vulnerable to this vicious cycle. It forced them out of jobs, if you will. The free market will take care of itself. If you eliminate minimum wage, it allows businesses to hire people, and competition will drive it, and essentially wages will go up, but you're not going to work for $3 an hour because there is no job where the market value is that low. So that's sort of, again, that progressive propaganda that they're putting out there, because they're not protecting private citizens. They're not protecting particularly urban citizens. They're protecting themselves. And I say they, I'm talking about unions and progressives. And you look at the results in the urban cities. You know, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not embellishing, clearly, because when you look at the unemployment rate in the urban cities, clearly I'm not making this up. It has nothing to do with party politics. Somebody might say he's just saying that because he's a Republican, or he's just saying that because he's a conservative. No, that's not true. It doesn't make any difference what you are. The fruit, the evidence is clear that these governmental policies have failed, and we have to change them. And either we're going to change them, or we're going to continue going down a slippery slope where we don't have jobs, and it's just going to get worse.
Okay, all right. Now, like in a city like Detroit, where you have lots of African-American entrepreneurs, but it's also a heavily unionized city, what do you think you can? How do you cut through to the people that are, like you said, small business owners, and let them know that affects them too? Because I mean,
they already know that. They already know that. But people are so intimidated by these unions. I have a number of friends who are contractors in the city of Detroit. I just talked to one of them yesterday. He contracts security guards, and he is against prevailing wages. He's opposed to it, and he's actually had to find work outside of the state of Michigan. He's had to go someplace else. So because of prevailing wages. So I don't think that you have to convince them of anything. I think you just stick to the facts. Black contractors know that by being non-unionized, they're not able to get these bids. They know they're being shut out of opportunity, but they don't have the resources to go up against powerful unions. And in Detroit, which is a predominantly Democrat city, they don't have the representation that will back them up. So I don't think it's a matter of having to convince them. I think it's a matter of having to support them.
Okay. And now some other things. You've been, like I said, I was telling everyone on the air, you have been really active out here. Last weekend, you were actually filmed at a Planned Parenthood rally. You were setting some folks straight. You never sugarcoat stuff. So what was going on at that event?
Well, Planned Parenthood intends to build sort of a mega abortion center in Pontiac, Michigan. And my friends in the Michigan Right to Life organizations contacted me to advise me about that. And so we decided to plan out a protest. On that particular day, Planned Parenthood was doing a fundraiser and bringing a comedian to tell jokes to raise money for it. And we felt that there's nothing funny about 36.5% of abortions being black children. There's nothing funny about the fact that if you look at the genesis of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger was a racist. She believed in eugenics. People can Google this stuff. They can say, oh, he's making that up. No, I'm not. Just Google it. Just don't take my word for it. I want you to research for yourselves, for your listening audience. And you'll find out that Margaret Sanger partnered with people who were on an agenda to annihilate black people. She said that verbatim. This is public record. So, and unfortunately, people like W.E.B. Du Bois, they partnered with Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood to set up abortion clinics in Harlem and other places. So when you look at the consequences of this agenda, there's nothing funny about it. And you don't see abortion clinics in the suburbs to the degree that you see them in the inner cities. I think over 70% of all abortion clinics are centrally located in urban communities. So that's not by design. That's by design. That's not by accident. Just like it's not by accident that 100% of your malt liquor billboards are in black communities. They know what they're doing, don't they? So we have to do something about this, and that's not the only thing that we have to do. Men have to step up. We have to step up because clearly black women would not be aborting children at these alarming rates if we as men were taking care of our business and perhaps marrying these women that we get pregnant, supporting them, taking responsibility for our lives. And I say that because over 80% of the women that are getting abortions are single women. So that says something about the fact that men aren't doing our job. So I'm not saying that's the only issue, but we certainly need to make sure people know they have options. And so what I noticed when I was out there, most of the people who had signs, they were picketing us, pro-choice activists. Their sign says things such as cancer screening, prevention services, and therefore I had a discernment that they probably don't even know much about the history of this organization, so hence the video. Now, I didn't know that I was being videotaped until after the fact. Someone actually called me and said, hey, man, I saw you in the video, so I was actually taken aback. I didn't know. When you're out there in a situation like that, you're not thinking about a camera, I assure you. So I went over there and talked to them because I had the notion they probably don't know. And sure enough, if you watch the video, you'll see that many of those who I was talking to, they were clearly listening. They were paying attention. The one black male out there, he was listening intensely, and he later came and talked to me. And another young lady who was out there came and gave me a bottle of water and hugged me. Now, mind you, I didn't drink the water. I didn't drink the water, brother.
Smart man.
Yeah. But I talked to them about the history. I talked to them about the data. We showed them the pictures. You know, I think it's something like 91.5% of all abortions, I think, is in the 13th week of gestation. How do you, in good conscience, support, and if you know anything about the methods of abortion, you know, especially at that stage, they have to go in and essentially chop up the skull and crush the skull and chop up the body and suck it out. It's pretty disgusting stuff. So we need to make sure that we do a better job of offering life-saving choices, or as I've heard one of my friends say, pro-life is far more encompassing than abortion. It's really from the womb to the tomb, but we have to save our babies in the womb.
All right. Now, like I said, you know, we're talking about the multiple things you're doing here. What are you thinking right now as you're hearing these our elected leaders in D.C. arguing back and forth over this debt ceiling? What do you think they need to do to get things done?
You know, you set me up for that, didn't you, Wayne?
No, well, you know, you don't have to give me the long version. No, you don't have to give me the long version. What do you think?
Okay, I think we need to quit playing games in Washington, and first thing we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to eliminate corporate waste, corporate subsidies. I told you before in conversations about if I had my way, I'd like to see them eliminate the Department of Education. I'd like to see them eliminate the Department of Energy. If you look at the Department of Agriculture, Education, Transportation, Energy, we're talking possibly $2 trillion in governmental subsidies. And what happens, for example, in the case of a Department of Education, you have the Department of Education serves as a sort of a conduit for taxpayers' dollars to send them to, and they skim off the top, send it to the state. The state skims off the top some more before it gets to the kids. I say let's let the state handle their business and put kids first. And it's interesting that the Carter administration, it's my understanding that the Department of Education was created during the Carter administration under the pressure from teachers' unions. And they instituted what was called Title I funding. We all know what that is. And Title I funding allegedly was intended to equal the playing field so that states who had fewer financial resources and poor school districts were supposed to get more resources. But guess what happened, Wayne? The rich got richer and the poor got poorer with respect to those school districts. Why? Because special interests in unions made that happen. So it got worse, not better. So if that be the case, we don't need a continuation of that. So we need to definitely eliminate corporate waste, number one. Number two, certainly entitlements.
Okay.
And I think that Medicare, especially Social Security, perhaps wasn't intended as an entitlement, but the government has been corrupt. They put their hands where it doesn't belong. They've abused Social Security. And, you know, I know people that are getting Social Security just because they're crack addicts, believe it or not. So you have American citizens because of governmental overreach who are abusing Social Security. So hence it does become an entitlement for many. So the system is broken. So I think that from a conservative end, we need them to step up to the plate, and we need them to hold the fort. We do not need to raise the debt ceiling. We should not fall for the scare tactics, the woeism of progressives who are really just fighting for special interests. Once again, they're fighting for the teachers' union. They're fighting for the unions. They're fighting for corporations. And it's interesting how a lot of people accuse Republicans of being for the rich. But if you take a look at the Ryan policy, Ryan wants to cut or eliminate corporate welfare. So if Republicans or conservatives were actually for the rich and didn't care about the poor, then they would just turn the other way with respect to corporate subsidies. But that's not what's happening. It's the Democrats in Washington who are actually fighting for the elite class. Got
you. Well, you know, I want to commend you, Stacy, for all what you've been doing. Like I said, you know me, you're my friend. I follow you around, watching what you're doing out here, and you're really doing some amazing work. You know, with the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Michigan. I know we got some announcements coming up soon on that. The Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition, which you're a spokesperson of now. You're really doing some good work out here, and I commend you for it on behalf of all conservatives here in Michigan.
Well, I thank you, man. And the right to work issue, Gary was so eloquent, and he's an amazing leader himself, as Mr. Miller is. The thing about right to work is it's not It's not about right to fire. It's not anti-union. All the propaganda that goes out there. They want to bust up the unions. No, that's not what we're trying to do. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should understand civil rights better than black Americans. And it's really a civil rights issue. You should not be discriminated against because you express your freedom of choice. You should not be forced to join a union or to finance something that you don't necessarily believe in. And union wages, or they talk about collective bargaining. You know, what are they bargaining for? If you look at their wages, we know, because you grew up in Detroit and we talked about the last 30, 40, 50 years, you know that people who are now coming into the workforce are not getting the wages they got 50 years ago, 40 years ago. I think that the union brass are not fighting for the common workers. They're fighting for special interests. They're fighting for their jets. They're fighting for their vacations. They're fighting for their own bonuses. They're fighting for the right to continue pouring millions and millions of dollars into the coffers of Democrats who represent their special interests. So what if I'm a Republican, or what if I'm a Libertarian, or what if I'm just apolitical? I don't care anything about politics, and I don't want to support politics. So I ought to have a right to have my money used for what I want it to be used for, the taxpayer. Now, for those who say, well, these people are free riders and they're getting their wages and benefits represented by the union, and they're not, they're opting out, so that's not fair. That's a load of what. So at the end of the day, it's not the private citizens who are the free riders. It's the unions. They're the free riders because they're using money for special interests without the permission or without the collaboration or support of their workers. The workers don't get a say so.
Right.
So I think they're the free riders. And as Gary alluded to, from an economic standpoint, Michigan is number 50 for 10 consecutive years in creating private sector jobs. Now, who in their right mind wants to say we want to keep it more of the same? Do we stay the ship and keep Michigan at the bottom of the totem pole in jobs, or do we say something's been broken and we have to fix it? Because for 10 straight years, not only have we been number 50 in creating private sector jobs, but guess what? We've been near the top at losing jobs.
Okay.
So when Snyder came in and he said jobs, 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 that's precisely what we need. But if that's going to happen, as Snyder alluded to, we have to push governmental policies that says we're friendly to businesses. And so right to work is first and foremost pro-citizen, pro-worker, not necessarily, and it helps the unions too, believe it or not. So and nobody's going to chase the unions out because right to work states also have unions. So people still get a choice, and that's the most important thing: choice, choice, choice. And who knows that again better than those who have been the benefactors of the civil rights movement. Okay.
Now, I had one person on my chat room. They just wanted to know, what was your opinion on the NLRB and the SC Boeing plant, I guess, with the right to work issues there, and how Obama tried to freeze people out, if they weren't going to use union work.
Well, I mean, it's like I just said. President Obama. It's interesting too because, and I thank the person in chat for asking that question. It's a great question. I think once again, the president and Democrat representatives have shown their priority is to protect special interests, just like for Social Security. What did the president say? Well, if the Republicans don't buck and give in, well, guess what? They're not going to get their checks. But wait a minute, Mr. President, you bailed out all these large corporations, but you can't come up with a bailout for senior citizens. So that tells me that says a lot about their priorities. So it's quite simple. What do I think about it? I think that the Democrats, the progressives in our country, are the real, true elitists in our nation. Don't buy, or don't, as we say in the hood, don't believe the hype. It's not the Republican Party. You don't see the Republican Party fighting for Boeing. Who do you see fighting for them? You see Democrats. You don't see the Republican Party trying to protect subsidies to large oil companies. You saw our president doing that. So hopefully people will start to wake up and start to question these things and start to make different decisions. And again, this is not a lobby for people to flock to the Republican Party. You don't have to do that. Just vote truth. Vote on the side of truth. Stand on the side of truth. And if you do that, if we do that, then we finally can do away with these oppressive, discriminative governmental policies that have failed us forever. We need to stop listening to the lies of President Obama, who came into office saying that he cared about unemployment in black communities. He said that he was going to support policies that address those issues. Well, guess what? We're worse off now than what we were when he started. So and so we got to get past this accusations of racism, of self-hatred, racist against your own people, all these silly, petty things I've heard over the course of time as I've advocated for public policies that I hope will, in fact, open up the job market. And again, you heard me say it's not just a matter of somebody creating jobs for us, but it's also about us creating jobs for ourselves. But it's more difficult to do that as an entrepreneur if we have an oppressive public policy in place that keeps us from competing because of unions.
Okay. Well, Stacy, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. You're always welcome to come on here. I appreciate it. Can you give the people that are listening in today, if they want to support either the Frederick Douglass Foundation or know more about the Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition, the websites?
Sure. I believe the Michigan Freedom to Work is mifreedomtowork.com. That's mifreedomtowork.com. And please go on there and study the issues. Again, don't go in with an objective mind. And remember, the key word is choice. It's choice. Who can't support choice? The Frederick Douglass Foundation of Michigan is www.f as in Frederick, D as in Douglas, F as in Foundation of Michigan spelled out.com. That's FDF of Michigan.com. Also, I write for a Tea Party Patriots newsletter called the AmericanPatriotsPress.com. It's www.AmericanPatriotsPress.com. You know, I'm heavily involved with the Michigan Tea Party Alliance, Wayne, as you know. And I love what they're doing, and I like the fact that they're working very diligently to try to take our country back in the direction that it needs to go. And if you are in Twitter, you can find me at Stacy Swimp. That's STACYSWI, M as in Michael, P as in Pal. That's at Stacy Swimp on Twitter or on Facebook, Stacy M. Swimp. Thank you.
All right. Well, Stacy, thank you again. You might want to be listening in on this last interview here. I don't know if you might want to. It's going to be quite a little change up here. So I really appreciate you coming on this evening. and if you get a chance, listen in. Okay.
Well, I've heard all of the people on the show so far, so I'm going to remain objective and finish this one.
All right. Thanks a lot, my brother.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Have a good evening.
You too.
All right. Now, the next person I'm bringing on the show, it's going to be a different. We're going to bring someone in from the left. All the things you've heard this evening is pretty much been from a lot of my conservative friends, and they're showing their side of the story. So I'm going to bring in the president of Michigan Forward, Brandon Jessup. He's instrumental right now in trying to repeal the Emergency Financial Manager Act. So I'm gonna bring him on. I see we have a caller on the air, so I'm gonna get Brandon on the line, and I'll hold on for that call, Mount Baptist. Okay, thank you. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on there, Wayne? How you doing?
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. I don't know how much if you've been listening into the show or not, but we've had some very interesting opinions, and obviously we're going to bring you in to talk about it, bring it from your side of the vantage. But for people listening in tonight, I want you to kind of give a little bit of background information about yourself and about your organization.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, Wayne, man, thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad you're back on the air, Doc. We missed you, man.
Thank you, man.
I'm always the guy that got friends on both sides of the aisle. And the point is that we got to make some progress. And I've been here in the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan, almost all my life. And I guess one of the main things about this is where I've been. I'm a graduate from EMU. Long-time activist, progressive activist, and I'm chairman and CEO of Michigan Forward, urban public policy think tank centered right here in Detroit, working on state and local policy initiatives. The reason why I love being on shows like yours, Doc, is this is how we get to the crux of what's really going on in our communities, and can really hammer out some real workable solutions. Instead of being slanted one way to the left or one way to the right, really the way that we get forward and move forward is through collaboration and compromise, and that's what Michigan Forward is all about. I heard a few a few guys. I know I listen in to Stacy as much as I can, and I commend Stacy for his work, organizing nationally and here in the state of Michigan. He brought up some very interesting points about Planned Parenthood. Maybe we could talk a little bit later about that.
Definitely.
But yeah, what's on my chest right now is this unconstitutional emergency manager law.
Okay.
I know you said earlier, the emergency financial manager law, and honestly, we don't have any more emergency financial managers in the state of Michigan. Everyone is an emergency manager, and I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, giving one person absolute power in any situation is the wrong situation because absolute power corrupts absolutely. We all agree to that.
Okay.
And we can come to any example you want to. At the end of the day, we know that once again, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's the reason why our forefathers came here to this nation in the first place and to found a new country to really get some democratic rights where everyone has a voice. Stacy said something earlier about labor and African Americans, being able to seek gainful employment free from any kind of oppression, whether from an employer or from a group. And, with Public Act 4, the unconstitutional Public Act 4, the unfunded mandate, Public Act 4, the emergency manager law, this is taking away the voice from entire communities.
Okay.
Whenever you give one person the opportunity to dismantle and dissolve, municipalities that have 300 and 400 years of history, such as Pontiac, here in our state, we gotta look at what we're really doing here, and I think that we're taking a sledgehammer to kill an axe.
Right. Okay. Now,
go ahead, John.
No, well, the thing, I was hoping you were listening to Tom earlier. Tom McMillin, who's the 45th district rep, and he co-sponsored that bill. He said, and this is the thing. I remember me and you talked about this before. I had never seen Detroit city council members and the mayor arguing over budget cuts. Do you see any positives to that law that's been created?
Outside of possibly putting some fire under some elected officials to really get their financial houses in order, that's about it. This is not an early warning system, as Governor Snyder said. And I commend Mr. McMillin for winning an election and being an elected official here in this state. That's a tough job.
Right.
But after we get past just the fact that the law is legislation, there's nothing else good about this bill. There's nothing good about giving one person the power to sell assets, public assets at that, assets that our tax dollars every day maintain and fund. And now we talk about mismanagement, things of that nature. That's why we have recalls. If we have poor elected officials, get them out. And on the local level, especially with city councils and townships and things of that nature, it takes a couple thousand signatures to really get some of these recalls going. And that's what I would suggest if you're not happy with your local representation. But calling for an emergency manager is just going entirely too far, and really it puts an undue stress on communities. Case in point, Robert Bobb, Detroit Public Schools, past emergency financial manager, he assumed a debt of $217 million. He left with a debt of $327 million after closing 75% of the Detroit Public Schools. So really, how can we say that emergency managers work? Now, in Robert Bobb, everyone says he did a really good job, but did he manage the job that he was set to do? I don't think so. Did he manage the emergency that was related to the finances of Detroit Public Schools? Clearly he didn't. He left with a larger deficit, and now we can't hold anyone accountable. Where's the democracy in this? Where's the due process? There is none in Public Act 4, and it has to be repealed.
Okay. Now, what have you been doing to move forward with that, with getting it repealed? What action have you taken so far?
Well, sir, we got engaged in the democratic process. We drafted a petition that's going around statewide with partners from both sides of the aisle, helping us to not only just to gain signatures, but sign a petition as well. In our petition to repeal Public Act 4, what it does is it takes this unconstitutional mandate in our communities and freezes that law. It stops the broad powers given to one person to dismantle our communities, and it puts it on the ballot for 2012.
Okay.
And then, the people of Michigan can decide whether Public Act 4 is a just law or if it's unconstitutional. And I'm confident that the people of Michigan will find this law unconstitutional.
Okay. Now, the question is, what if it's, in the meantime, like you take a look at Benton Harbor, where he said that this emergency financial plan can only be there for up to a year. And so if he gets and makes the situation better and then gets out and still returns the power back to the local officials, is that still unsatisfactory in your eyes as far as getting things back in order?
Well, this is where we dig a little bit deeper into Public Act 4. See, yes, you can have an emergency manager with a contract for a year, but they can set budgets and hard budgets for 2 years that elected officials cannot change. So even if an emergency manager is, in and out, your local elected officials can't set a budget. They can't do what they're set to do, especially in the legislative body. We know in most of our municipalities what's the main goal of a city council: to pass a budget.
Right.
So if they can't pass a budget for 2 years,
but let's think about it this way, though.
Why return those folks into office?
But let's think about it this way: they were the ones. Let's say, for if it's the exact same city council, and they're the ones that helped create the mess that these cities were in. So wouldn't it make sense? I mean, and this is just me and you, and we always talk about this. If you left it, if you put it in place when you left after that year, why would you want them to go right back to the same bad habits they had that made it a reason for them to be there in the first place? Wouldn't it be sensible to put in maybe a 2-year budget, and so they can see how this operates with them in place and showing that it does work? And then I guess after the 2 years is up, if they really wanted to go back to the way they were doing things, it just seems to me that putting that in place at least gives them the idea that how to follow the stencil of what they put in place. And if they want to go outside of that, then that would be, I guess, their decision. But doesn't that make sense, at least for the time being? If we get back in good financial, sound strategy with this plan, why would we change it a year into it and let the guys come back and chop it up again?
And I ask you this: if I came into your business, Wayne, and I said, Wayne, you're running under the water, and I'll help you return back into the black, but for 2 years, I won't really give you a roadmap on what to do. I'll just freeze what you can spend. And then also on top of that, I'll freeze your revenue as well. So I'll just lock you in, and all you're pretty much doing is just riding this on out for the next 2 years. Now, you may think that's okay. But with that bad for your business, I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like that at all.
If my business is going to go, and this is how they propose it to people, the city will say we can't write checks after this month. If my business was going to go out of business in 30 days, or you told me I won't have any more money to spend, and they get involved, the state or wherever, if you came and said, here's some money, I'm going to keep your business afloat, I think some people you're going to have, I guess, again, we put that in the hands of the voters. You would have to decide, do you want to have no business at all, or do I want to have someone help me help my hand for the next year?
Well, let's be fair here. Let's be fair here now, Wayne. Normally, in the private sector, your business would go bankrupt, and no one would come to save you.
There you go.
To be honest with you, if you're that far under, you would just go bankrupt, and that's the reason why this system of emergency management really just does not work. It's a quick fix bankruptcy court, all right, where once again the people don't know, the people who pay into the system, the people who support these communities, the people who pay their water bills and water sewage bill on time every month, and all those types of things are now being put into undue statuses where, like in Pontiac, they have a 14 water rate increase just on the administration of water, not on the delivery of water to their system, to their homes, okay?
Oh, okay.
So if you have a meter on any structure, a water meter on any structure, you had a 14% administration fee added, okay, to your cost of your water bill and water and sewage. Now, this was done by an emergency manager. Now, more than likely, we all complain about Detroit water department and everything else, but they never give you a 14% rate increase. Never. That's unheard of. Most of the increases that we see in our public water and sewage departments are with the cost of living. Why? Because they understand if you make drastic increases in the cost of public services, those services will become, one, unaffordable, and then two, they will cease to sustain themselves.
Okay.
So, this is just poor business practice. And that's why we have to repeal Public Act 4. This is bad business for Michigan, and this is bad business operations.
Now, I'm sure if you've heard some of my previous guests on here tonight, we were talking about other things that could help Michigan bring in more business, and I know you vehemently disagree with this as far as making Michigan a right-to-work state. What do you say? I mean, like I said, I had Gary Glenn, who came on from the American Family Association of Michigan, who gave some very revealing numbers on the loss of jobs and where we're at nationally. I mean, we're at number 50 at some of these levels. What do you think? Do you think at all in any kind of way that the door should be cracked open or it should be on the table for this to become a right-to-work state in Michigan? And especially when you're talking about individual rights. Now, again, I think, we always talk about union busting and things like that. We're talking about, again, if you're working in the union, you're working for Ford, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, you wouldn't want your dues going towards supporting gay marriage, I would assume. That's me. How do you feel when you hear him saying that, your dues can go whatever and you don't have any control over it? Would you at least like to see that modified, or is that just something you say hands off right now, we move forward on other issues?
Well, when you get organizations that are large, it's hard to really get engaged a lot of times. And I'm not making an excuse on anyone's behalf. I think that people who choose to join a union, definitely you need to join the solidarity and continue to pay your union dues, period. I support unions. I support collective bargaining. The point is that when we get to right to work, I don't really think this legislation will solve our unemployment problems. It really doesn't. You have 50 and 60% unemployment in some of our urban centers, okay?
Okay.
The fact is that we need to get serious about education in the state. That's the real fact. We have a workforce that is still learning on an agricultural learning curve where we take 3 months out for the summer break. Or normally, I think around 50 or 60 years ago, maybe even 110 years ago, around Booker T. Washington days, we would take that summer and plant fields and plant seeds in the field with our family and make sure that we could sustain for harvest around Thanksgiving time. We need to change the way that we teach our children and how we prepare them to compete in this global economy. That's the way that we really get to right to work. I think when we get into collective bargaining and increasing the opportunity for people to dissolve contracts without any say-so or any pushback from those who actually hold those contracts, I think that's really pushing us away from the American process and why we really are in this country in the first place, to pursue free enterprise. And if we choose to do that as a group, we should be able to do that.
Now, what did you think about Stacy's ideas on prevailing wages and the minimum wage? Essentially, he said that's a job killer for the black worker. How did you feel when you heard that? Come on.
We got a lot of job killers for black workers.
Okay.
I think the lack of investment in urban centers is more of a job killer for black workers. We can drive competitive wages if we create competitive work environments, and the way we do that is to really get aggressive about attracting new businesses and innovative businesses. We lost the way once again on energy. Okay. 2-3 years ago, we were so gun-ho on energy. I could find an ethanol gas station everywhere I looked.
Man.
But I'm serious. We had 7 plants. We had 7 plants that operated at 30% capacity. All right? Now, my thing is this. We have a technology center that's stagnant, okay, in the state of Michigan. We have a manufacturing sector that's still stagnant, and also we have a skilled trade sector that's stagnant. We have a intellectual capital industry and economy that hasn't even really gotten going yet. Why? Because we haven't invested.
Okay.
I really feel that we haven't gotten to investing into the things that we need to do in the state to make it better. So that's how you get to a prevailing wage. That's how you really make minimum wage something, as Stacy said, really for teenagers. I appreciated minimum wage when I was in school. when I was a young lad working at McDonald's, I didn't want to flip burgers and French fries for $4 an hour. But doing that at 25 made that just much more appealing. And I think that's the same way for those people right now who are 25, 30 years old, 40 years old, working at McDonald's for their second job. Okay. And minimum wage helps some folks in an economy like this actually get over the hump. So we have to really think about what we're talking about. Now, prevailing wage, I feel that's a race to the bottom for workers in America, and definitely here for workers in the state of Michigan.
Okay. All right. Well, if people are listening in right now, can you give them a little more information about your website and how they can, if they want to support you or at least go in there and check out your information, what can they do? Where can they find you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Michigan Forward is once again a 501c3 nonprofit public policy organization focused right here in the city of Detroit. And you can find us at www.michiganforward.org. If you want to email us, you can email us at info@michiganforward.org. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You can hear our views on education. You can hear our views on illiteracy, which is a huge mountain that we must climb right now in our communities. It's sad that a majority of our college graduates, I'm sorry, not college graduates, our high school graduates or high schoolers in the city of Detroit are functionally illiterate. That's unacceptable. That's the reason why we can't get decent wages and we really can't attract the businesses that we need, because we see the deficiencies in our education system every day. It's so glaring. I wouldn't want to start a business here in Michigan.
Okay, now look, Brand, I got to let you know, I got a caller calling in, and I recognize the number, so I'm giving you a heads up right now. Stacy Swimp has called back. I think he's been listening to you, and I think he wants to get in on this conversation a little bit. So I'm gonna bring him back on the air real quick. I wanted this to happen. I did. Hold on.
That's great.
Stacy. Let's see if we get Stacy out. Stacy, you're back on the air. You couldn't resist this. You couldn't resist it, could you?
I had to call. No, I'm just joking.
Hey, Brandon, how's it going,
Hey, how you doing, brother? He wanted us to fight tonight, man. We're not going to give him the benefit, man. We're not going to do it, brother.
It's all right, man. I'm walking in your home turf. It's okay.
Oh man. Hey, Brandon, I just wanted to speak to a couple of things you said, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Because you talked about education being so important. I just want to say you're absolutely right. And I just wanted to highlight, however, that education and right to work are completely unrelated. One has nothing to do with the other. And right to work simply has to do with choosing whether or not to work for a union. But I will say again that you're right about education. But my brother, if we're serious about education, then choices also has to be a part of our discussion in education, meaning that we have too many children who are being forced into filling public school systems because guess what? They're not being given an option. You have teachers. Brandon, you tell me, what job in America can you get a guarantee of permanent tenure no matter how poorly you're performing except for a teachers union? You know, I mean, come on. I mean,
all right, that's round one.
I don't think you get employed by the teachers union to teach.
I got to mediate here. That's round one. Brandon, go next.
Let's be clear. Teacher unions don't employ teachers. Schools do, and yes, teachers unions help to fight for tenure to make sure that teachers aren't expendable. Let's be very clear about one thing.
Hold on, Stacy, you got to let them get one at a time, fellas.
and we got to be very clear here. You know, I'm not going to pick on teachers at all. If it wasn't for teachers, I wouldn't be where I am today, as smart as I am today, as progressive as I am today, and as American as I am today. So I'm not going to get into teacher tenure at all. But I will say this about right to work. I can choose to work anywhere I want right now. I have the right to work right now. If I don't want to pay union dues, if I don't want to join a union, I don't have to. And that's the fact here in this state. That's the fact in the United States. So adding a constitutional amendment called right to work, I'm confused why we even need it.
All right,
I have a right to work. If I want to sustain life, that's my right to work right there. I have to work to live. That's a fact no matter what country you're in.
It's a valid point. It's a valid point, Brandon, that you can go anywhere and work. But guess what happens when you're in major manufacturing towns that are majority union? You what you're saying essentially is fold shop, wave the white flag, and move somewhere else. Well, everybody's not going to do that. Everybody can't do that, and people should not be forced beyond their will to contribute financially to something they don't believe in. At the end of the day, it is a constitutional protection that we should have, that we should not be taken advantage of or discriminated against as workers. Again, don't focus so much on unions or anti-unions, but focus on discrimination. Is it or is it not discriminatory for a worker to be threatened with being fired or, in fact, not being hired because he or she will not support a union due? So that's a very serious issue. With respect to teachers unions, I agree with you, Brandon. I agree. I just want to say I agree with you, Brandon, that teachers are important. Teachers are important, Brandon, and I know a lot of good teachers who are working double time. I'm telling you, I know teachers that go beyond the call of duty. They're spending their own money trying to help students out. So don't think that in any shape, form, or fashion that I'm anti-teacher. Please don't think that. But what I'm saying is, I know a lot of good teachers who want to see these bad teachers get put out the door so that we can get better teachers in the school system. But that cannot happen if we have these first in, first out policies where our best qualified teachers very often are being laid off, Brandon, because teachers' unions are protecting bad teachers. I didn't say anything about hiring. So I just want to say that. Yeah.
Break.
Oh, yeah, you're correct. You're correct. Poor performance is poor performance. But when you have teachers that if you earn tenure, one thing about tenure is that it's earned. It's not given. All right. So I just want to get off that. But when it comes to right to work, tenure is earned. It's not given. That's a fact. It's not a promise from the union that, hey, you're going to get tenure. But I want to stick to this right to work thing. And my concern is, you talked about manufacturing jobs here and the fact that, the majority industry run by manufacturing jobs. But for the past 10 years, we've lost over 800,000 jobs. Majority of those were manufacturing jobs. So let's get real about our economy here. Right to work means that we get serious about attracting and growing the businesses that are in this state, that grow our local economies. We need, when we talk about right to work to me means that we get grocers in here that Royal Oak or Pontiac or whomever, we don't turn away Kroger, okay? Kroger not only just employs the 50 or 60 workers that work there daily, but it creates 5 to 7 other feeder jobs. Now you got a trucker that has products to ship. Now you have smaller other chain stores that buy bulk products. It may be a restaurant. It may be that teacher going to get snacks for their students. So this is the type of activity that I would call right to work, not a constitutional amendment that goes after some discrimination that honestly I don't think exists. The discrimination is the fact that our communities are being redlined by special interest groups on the right and the left, okay, that really don't care about the growing local economies, harvesting the commerce that's there and turning it into a strong machine that Detroit used to be, that Flint used to be, that Pontiac used to be. That's where we need to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, I fear the direction our state and our country is going in if everyone takes that sort of hands-off approach that you do with respect to discrimination. I fear that.
But I don't say that's hands-off. I'm not hands-off. I'm hands-on.
Somebody's got to fight the United States Constitution, Brandon. Somebody's got to do it. Now, it may not be your fight, and I respect that, but I'm telling you, it is a constitutional issue. And it's with respect to businesses, Brandon, it benefits employers, in fact, for Michigan to become a right-to-work state. And that's something I don't want to just talk about the employee, but let's talk about the employer. If you take away right to work, then guess what? Businesses are free to manage their company without outside interference, number one. Number two, none of their assets are devoted to labor negotiations, Brandon, or matters such as, let's say, mandatory disciplinary procedures. The information is out there. It also increases the flexibility to control the workforce. The company is not bound by certain things. Brandon, it benefits the businesses. Numbers don't lie. You heard Gary Glenn talk about it earlier. The top states in our nation in terms of creating private sector jobs are all right-to-work states, Brandon, the top states. Now, that's not something that we're making up, so that's compelling. So you talk about the need for jobs, my friend. Well, then we need to take a look at governmental policies that are business-friendly. You can't tell me that the policies we have at this current time are business-friendly because you just said it. We lost 800,000 jobs. Why are we losing those jobs, Brendan? Because businesses can't afford to stay here with these kind of laws. Guess what they do?
That's not the case. Come on, Stacy. Don't twist the facts now.
Come on, brother.
Come on, Stacy. Don't twist the facts now. Something that we mentioned about the economy, and let's be very serious. Let's get very serious about our economy and how we create jobs. We create jobs in the state of Michigan through diversification. All right, that's been our ill for almost 35 years. That's been our ill for 35 years, longer than I've been living. Okay, so let's be honest about it.
Where has diversification been the last 10 years when we lost 800,000 jobs and when we pummeled all the way down to 50 in our country for 10 consecutive years? Please explain to me what the heck does that have to do with diversification?
Hold on,
diversification. I'm all tongue-tied, Brandon. I'm getting so excited.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's excitement or if it's anger. I'm gonna ask you to chill out for a second.
That's what I'm saying, man. You gonna make me mute you, Stacy. You gotta let them. We gotta go one at a time here. One at a time. We got 10 minutes left.
Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead, brother.
But let's be serious. Diversification is the fact that we don't rely on the big three to employ 80 and 90% of our workforce in any community. Okay, that's diversification. Diversification is the return of the finance industry in the state of Michigan. That's diversification. Why? Because I have a degree in economics. Okay, I have a degree in business. Okay, and it's sad that I can't become an employer. I'm just a contractor at this point right now in my stage of life because the funding that I need to build my IT firm, to do my research, is not available. All right? Now, that's a reality here in the state of Michigan, not just for African Americans, but for a majority of working families and middle-class families in the state of Michigan. That's a fact.
That's true.
That is a fact.
That is true.
Now, that's true diversification. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into another sector, okay, of industry in the free enterprise. And you said something about states that have growing economies have right-to-work policies in place. The majority of those states, like I know you're talking about in Mississippi, you may be talking about in Tennessee, you may be talking about in Alabama. The majority of those states are growing. Well, I'm asking you for details, sir. Thank you. So we talk about Virginia too, okay? And now we could talk about foreign investment coming in the States, and I'll tell you this right now. We have more foreign investment than we do domestic investment. I'm a champion for America. And I want to make sure that the people that come up and the people that come up before me, and the African Americans and minorities and whites, blacks, whomever, as long as you're an American here, that you can really make it as an American here in America. And the fact is that there are more hurdles for young people to grow businesses, to start businesses in America than there are for foreigners, foreign entities, not foreigners, but foreign entities and big, huge foreign companies to come here and invest with their own capital. We need to get serious about our domestic affairs. That's how we turn our economy around, and that's how we make it happen.
Brandon, I embrace that, but in terms of putting Americans first. But so let me just say I support putting Americans first, as you said that. And I thank you for sharing that. I'm only saying to you, nevertheless, Brandon, let's not underestimate. Let's please do not underestimate how dangerous to our economy prevailing wage laws are, minimum wage laws are. At least take a look at it. I'm not asking you to agree with me at this very moment. I'm asking you to take a look at it because it's important. It's very important that we do away with. And Brandon, think about the genesis of prevailing wages. 1931 Davis-Bacon Act. Congressman Baker. You know what they said? They said that we need to stop Negroes from competing for jobs with white union workers. That's on record. I'm not making that up. Look it up for yourself.
No, I understand. I'm very clear on Davis Baker Act.
So when you look at the genesis of it and the continuing impact of it, based upon the initial intent of that law, it is the only remaining Jim Crow law on the books in America today. You just said that you are for Americans. And I love that you said that. Brandon, I love that you said that. But since you believe that, just as I believe that, guess what we have a responsibility to do? We have a responsibility to protect all Americans from discrimination. The Davis-Bacon Act has always been, will always be, a discriminatory public policy. It was intended to be that when it was created. The impact today shows you, Brandon. The outcomes demonstrate that is doing precisely what it was intended to do. So let's not just minimize that and trivialize that and reduce that to trite statements, because I agree with you, Brandon. There's a number of other issues that it takes working alongside of those public policy issues that we have to address. So I just want you to know I agree with you that we cannot address it in one way and one way only. That's what you're saying. There are other issues too, and I agree with you. I agree with you, brother. I agree with you, brother. I'm only saying to you.
Listen to that, man. I am brought y'all together, man, and we have found something.
Hey, you know what?
I've done it again, man. I've done it again.
Look at Wayne forge your partnerships.
I've brought people together. Brought people together that have a lot. And see, me and Brandon, we can admit it. We have more things in common than we probably want to admit to each other, sometimes. But you have to talk it out, and I'm enjoying the process here, fellas. I'm glad that you called back in, Stacy.
Well, sure.
Stacy. Oh no, go on here, brother. Go on here.
No, go ahead. I've been interrupting you, and I apologize for doing that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Stacy, when it comes to prevailing wage, it was an issue I've been looking at, and I've been doing a lot of research and study on the Davis-Bacon Act, and really what it does and how do we get progressive about it, how we take the next step to make sure that all of us can really get the wages that we deserve. Okay, being the number one superpower in the world, all right? Being the country with the most technology to teach our future and our workforce the best. All right, so I think we have a place where we can find some common ground around prevailing wage. I definitely do believe that, and brother, I thank you for really championing that issue.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Well, man, I'm just overwhelmed here today with you two guys. So I want to say, hey, it's really touching over here. It's really touching. I want to thank both of y'all for coming on the show tonight. Stacy, thank you for coming back on again. Both of you are always welcome. And we're gonna finish. The three of us. My birthday's coming up. We're gonna sit down and just have some drinks and talk about this some more, because we could go all night on this, and I really do appreciate I really do appreciate you guys coming together and talking about this. Stacy, thanks again for coming on, and I'm gonna go off the air here in a minute here, but thanks again, Stacy, for joining me again tonight, bro.
Okay, you brothers have a beautiful night.
All right, thank you.
Hey, you too, Dad. Okay,
all right.
All right, Brandon, you like I said, that was beautiful right there, man. Appreciate that. I really do. It was a good open dialogue, and like I said, I tried to mediate and keep it cool as possible, but it really is. It shows that people have to work together to get stuff done.
Absolutely.
If only we could get everyone to work like that, I think we'd get a lot more done. But thank you for coming on tonight. I do appreciate what you do. Me and you don't agree on everything, but I do appreciate what you're doing out here. We need more brothers active, regardless of our ideologies. We still need to be out here together, trying to get the goals accomplished. So give the people one more time your website address, and if they want to come on there and support you, give them the website address.
Yes, sir. The website address is michiganforward.org. That's michiganforward.org. And Wayne, thank you for having me, man. As always, we got a lot of work to do. You know me, I'm the first guy to get a shovel, so let's make it happen.
No doubt. Thanks a lot, Brandon. I'll talk to you real soon. Thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Hey, thank you, Doc. Have a good night, man.
All right, God bless. Oh, man, now this was a fun night right here. I've got to say, this has been, I've had more guests on tonight than I probably usually have typically on a show, but it was really good tonight to get the different opinions of different people. And Brand, I want to thank everybody that came on tonight: Gary Glenn, Tom McMillin, Stacy Swimp, Brandon Jessup. Thank all of you gentlemen for coming on tonight, talking about what we can do here, on the Michigan Voice. There are a lot of different voices in Michigan, so it's good to hear some different perspectives. I want to again tell everybody, if you get a chance, go to the website conservativeiscool.com. That's where you can get updated on your news. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at WBConservative. But again, I really thank everybody that's listening in tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I did, and you can always listen to, if you missed any of it, you can always go back on and listen to it again. So thank you, everybody that's been listening. God bless you, and good night.